Welcome to the first video on my YouTube channel, and sorry for the streaks on the screen, but it's going to be the first video on my YouTube channel. It'll be the instructions on how to build the Super Flyboy. Now, all of the files are on Thingiverse and under Flyboy, and I just want to send a special thanks to Artoverkill for helping me fix these files and make sure that they were as good as possible before sending them over to Thingiverse. And if you like 3D printing and cool facts about different things, he's gonna be your guy. He's super funny, and I really like watching his videos.
Quick PSA, please watch the entire build video once before starting to build your rocket, because I had to rip all of this out of my rocket because I didn't pay attention to one detail.
Alright, now all you need is these two news code pieces, the body, and you can put these engine bay pieces to the side. Now this cylinder here, if it'll focus, has a slight bevel. That side you want to go down. Now in my opinion, the best way to do this is putting a little bit of packing tape around this until it's just snug enough so that it'll sit in here without sliding down like how it does now. So now that there's a thin layer of packing tape, it sits in there without moving a little bit. So now you're going to want to line up your nose cone with the body and put a little bit of glue around here and make sure that it lines up nicely. Just like this, so that it doesn't go over one edge too much than over the other. Now that that's done, you're going to locate your engine pieces, which should be these three, and you're going to move this piece away, put that to the side, and you want these two pieces specifically. And right here, it's very obvious that one side is bigger than the other, and that is very specific. So you want to make sure that they line up perfectly, because on both, there is a long side and a short side. You're going to want to make sure that they are lined up perfectly. It's very specific that you do it this way. Once you got it about here, you're going to glue this piece on. Now once it's glued, you're going to want to add a little bit of packing tape to this part and this part here. I specifically made them a bit looser because once this gets up high, this will have to eject from the body so that it is light enough to glide. And this part was done this way so that you could add a little bit of weight to the nose to make sure that when it's gliding, it doesn't have too much weight behind it, because if it has too much weight behind it, it'll just try to flip. But if it has too much weight in the nose, it'll just start nose diving, and we don't want either of those. So here I actually used some Scotch tape and then pinched it around this, and I did the same on the bottom. And this is where, it's kind of small, so you're going to need quite a few layers of tape. But just as a test, you could see it should be a bit more harder to slide on, but right there is the engine, and it should not slip out too easy, but not too hard at the same time. Okay, now that you have that done, we're going to move on to the next step, and this is where you are going to need your engine stop. So you're also going to need a paper plate and some aluminum foil, which I will go grab right now, and I'll tell you why in a second. Okay, once you got those, now you are going to make a blast stop. So it kind of sounds a little stupid on what I'm saying, but the blast stop is to stop the engine from pushing the lid all the way off. And so once you make your blast stop, that goes under the engine stop, and then the engine stop just slides in right on top. All right, the best way to do this is to trace out your engine stop on a piece, and you're going to want to double up on this at least 3 times so that you can make sure you have enough stop there. Then you're going to cover it in aluminum foil for the heat resistance and to make sure nothing lights on fire. Now that you have however many, I'm using 3, you're going to glue them all together. I wouldn't suggest using stick glue. I'm using hot glue on this, but you can also use glue like this Insecure glue, but I'm using hot glue in this one, so I'm going to use that, and then I'm going to cover it in aluminum foil. Now that they're all glued together, you just cover it in aluminum foil, and how I do it is I glue it onto this, and then I flip it a couple of times, adding glue per layer, and then you just tack on the glue onto that, and then flip it. Let me see if I can do it with one hand. I'm just flip it. And I do this a couple of times just to make sure that it's got a good seal, and then I trim it. Now once it's trimmed, you're just gonna glue it to that. All right, now that it's glued, that's gonna be facing down. But you're gonna add an extra layer over all of this just to make sure. You're gonna glue it, you're gonna make sure it's trimmed, but you're gonna glue it on essentially like this. Now it should look something like this. And this is just gonna get slid into here. It might be a little rough and a little tight, but that's just fine. So now you're gonna slide it down until this fits on comfortably. And then you flip it over, and the engine has a bevel. That bevel goes in the top, and there's a reason that this is like this, but it'll be shown in just a minute. But now everything fits like this, and you have finished the body. And then you are going to move on to the wings. Now that you have finished your body, you're going to be moving on to creating the wings. So right here I have a diagram showing how either your nose cone, either blunt or sharp, it cuts through the air, pushing air over it. Now it's on its side, as you can see by the wing clips here, but it pushes air, and since there's no wings on it, it doesn't push air under it, and it doesn't glide at all. Now you have wings. These are flat wings. I do not recommend these at all because, and this is why, you have your nose cone here cutting through the air, but now it's just hitting this flat surface, and it's not doing anything with it. It's just creating drag. But now you're pushing air under and over, and now that you're pushing air under your wings, you're creating lift, which gives you the ability to glide. And over here is the last diagram that I have. Here, up here is your nose cone, and it's pushing that air over, and it continues to push down because of this slanted wing, and that creates the least amount of drag possible, then pushing the air off. But right here, you can see how it still pushes air under and over, and right here. All right, now over on this page, here's a full scale of the wings. And now there's notches and a new drawing. This is the rudder. You're gonna need, you can either put one on one side, or how I prefer it is putting two on the wingtips and having it look something like this. Now over right here, it's a little diagram of what'll happen is when it finishes, when the engine finishes its acceleration, it will push itself out with the engine bay, and then the rocket will rotate off to one side and it'll go forward. Now the way you'll do this is you'll add a little bit of weight to the nose on one side. I'll show you which one, and it'll rotate onto its side and glide down. This is where we're going to grab some, what I prefer is foam board, and make some wings. Now at this point, the wing design is completely up to you, besides what I'd recommend, the slanted wing. Now, how I do it is I'd make a little etching, like this, and I mark that edge up to the cap right there. And this is where I just take a ruler and I make out my wing design like this. Now right there, and very lightly you can see it's a nice skinny wing. I would not recommend that. Now you can see that that's really high up and this goes down, so you can catch as much wind as possible and keep yourself as lifted as high as possible. So now you're just gonna cut your wing out and you're gonna copy it. And I'm just gonna drop this to the floor and it's gonna magically be there. Now they're done. And a quick blood warning for blood if you don't like that. I cannot stress enough to be careful when you're cutting, because I just did this because I don't like using a cutting board. But we're going to continue with getting these on that. All right, now you have them on the rocket, and you're going to want to get them as close to that line as possible without gluing the nose cone on. And from there, you're going to mark out where you're going to add your rudders, or rudder, which would be somewhere right here. And then you're going to cut that little slot out. Okay, so if you're doing dual rudders, this is something of what it'll look like. You're not gonna draw a line all the way across because you're not gonna cut it in half, but you're gonna mark a notch so that the wing is flush to the end of this, but that it still slides on. And this is just how mine looks. And once you get the first one done, then you'll just copy it onto another piece. But if you are only doing one rudder, you're not gonna have this bottom piece, and it'll look something like that. So just like this, you'll copy it down to another piece, and then you'll go from there. So here on the wing, you're just going to take this, you're gonna put it on here, I'm gonna make a notch at where it goes. And then I measured this whole length with a digital caliper to make it as easy as possible. And then I just divided it in half, and it ended up here. And so I'm gonna make my notch from here to here. And I'm gonna do the same on here with half that length, so that it can just slide on and be all the way on. Once you've done that with all 4 pieces, this is where you can now, where you can decorate. Well, they're all separate. Honestly, I think I'm gonna leave this black, but like spray paint the nose cone so I can see it in there, as well as spray painting the engine bay. I was looking for it for a second, I was like, where'd it go? But this is where you can have complete control over design and whatever you want. I do suggest painting it and coloring it or doing whatever you want to it before you glue everything together. And pretty much you can do whatever you want with the wings as long as it's somewhat like this, and it has to go below the body, otherwise it just will not work. The wings will not be long enough, they will not be big enough. But anyway, this is where you get to do with it as you please. I'm just gonna probably just draw on it and then not color it till later, but I'm just gonna see what I can do.
Quick painting PSA, please remove all removable items so that nothing gets stuck when painting. Once you get that done, I just painted the body. I set it on there. It's not glued just yet. But once you get that done, now you're just going to see how everything fits, make sure everything fits nice and snug. Then, I'm going to use that thing. I call it that thing because it's burnt me on multiple occasions, and I can show the marks. That's the newest one. You can't see the one on top of my knee very much anymore, but yeah. That thing, you gotta get that warmed up, and you get to glue wings on. So, do that. And then, now that is all done, it's all glued together, you're gonna learn why there is a small side and a large side. So, right here, you can see that there's less down here than there is up here, which means there would be more or less a little more weight going this way. So that's where you're going to add your launch tube or launch lug, which is normally, that you can pretty much be anything that's lightweight. I just use plastic straw. But now that since there's more weight that's going to be up here, that little, the short side, oh, I can't really do this with one hand, but that short side has to be up there, right with that launch tube, which is also up where this heavier bit would be, so that when you launch it, it doesn't start immediately leaning this way, but it'll have more pressure pushing it from this side, so it'll still go vertical. And it won't just tilt this way and then go and crash somewhere, but so that it'll still get up and eject this. Another thing is that you want to make sure, like, just pull it out just a tad, and make sure that there's enough room between the wings for this to just launch out and fall down, so that it doesn't get stuck between there, and then your CG is off, and then your plane just crashes, like it just flips. Because if that's still in there, there'll be so much weight going backwards that your plane will just do this, and then dive before doing this again, and then even if it did make a second roll, it would just dive again, and it'll highly likely just crash into the floor. So that's where you go after this step. Once you've figured out where you want your launch lug to be, then you glue it on, and then you test your CG. So I normally just go outside and give it a little toss and see how far it'll go, because essentially what you want it doing while it's flying is flying at a slight nose down way. So that, because if you keep it completely flat, 100% flat, which this will never happen in a perfect world, you will never have this perfectly 180 degrees. It'll just stall out and then fall nose down and then pick back up. If it's too tail heavy, like I said, it'll just flip. But with a slight nose down, you will have a nice glide down to the floor. So that's where you're going from now. You're gonna add your launch tube, and then you're gonna go outside and give it a toss. Now that you have finished adding your launch lug, hopefully on the correct side, like I did. I put it on the correct side this time. Yeah, I said this time because I've done a couple of these rockets before. But now what you want to do is you want to remove your engine bay. This one has its rocket engine inside of it, and it's actually easily removable, but that's besides the point. You want to remove this, and then you can take this outside for a glide test. Sorry for the gardeners, but when you launch it, that's tail heavy. That's something you need to fix. All right, once you have it to a really good glide angle, there just needs to be just a little bit, because I just tested it. When the engine blows, it'll do this, and then it'll pretty much start to lawn dart. It needs a little bit on the back, and it'll level back out, and it'll start coming down. And since it's a little tail heavy, it'll do this, but I don't think it'll have enough speed to do a full turn, so it'll just start doing this. So with that, you have finished the tutorial, and at some point, hopefully within the next month, I will have a flight video come out about this. So with that, you have just completed the Flyboy. Thank you for watching, and have a great day.